Everyone, as the bell in the Guildhall strikes 2 p.m., just again to welcome you all back to the reconvened planning committee from yesterday afternoon. And thanks for all of those here in attendance. We've got a healthy enough attendance here, folks, so we can get the ball rolling. And so we'll go to items number 1 and number 2. And again, that'll be the notice. No, we've done the notice, I suppose, haven't we? We'll just mark the attendance and any apologies. Okay, Maura.
Chair. Members, you're hereby summoned to attend the reconvened meeting of the Planning Committee, which will be hybrid and conducted remotely via WebEx and also physically in the chamber in Guildhall, Derry on Thursday, the 12th of January at 2 p.m. Alderman Alan Breslin.
Here, Maura.
Thank you. Alderman Keith Kerrigan. Alderman Keith Kerrigan. Sorry. Alderman Drew Thompson.
Here, Maura.
Thank you. Councillor Jason Barr.
Here, Maura.
Thank you. Councillor Raymond Barr.
Here, Maura.
Thank you. Councillor John Boyle.
Yep, here.
Chamber. Councillor Angela Dobbins. No. Councillor Paul Gallagher.
And Shaw.
Thank you. Councillor Christopher Jackson.
And Shaw.
Thank you. Councillor Dan Kelly.
And Shaw, Maura.
Thank you. Councillor Patricia Logue.
And Shaw.
Thank you. Councillor Kieran Maguire. Councillor Philip McKinney.
Here, Maura.
Thank you. And Councillor Sean Mooney.
Here.
Thank you. That's Chair.
Thanks, Maura. And again, thanks everybody for coming back this afternoon. I don't expect it'll be a long meeting, but a former colleague of mine used to always say, John Tierney, God bless him, he used to always say, beware the short agenda. Because sometimes it just doesn't turn out that way, but we'll see how we go. So just again, the formality of the broadcast statement. I'd like to remind everyone present at this meeting in the Guildhall or in attendance remotely that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with our protocol. Due to your attendance at this meeting, you're consenting to being filmed and the use of storage of those images for broadcasting or training purposes, and for the purpose of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. Members and approved speakers are reminded to only have their microphones and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility to highlight a request to speak. And of course, you'll find all of that on the Council's website, the privacy notice, etc. Okay, so that's the formalities of that out of the way. Finally, then, members, again, moving back to item 4 on the agenda, are there any further declarations of interests that you would wish to be recorded this afternoon? I've got none in the chamber, none in the chat box. Okay, thank you, members. So we'll move swiftly along now to the outstanding items on the agenda. And those are starting at agenda item number 9, which is a confirmation of a tree preservation order at lands opposite 1552 Barrow Hill Road. And I believe John is going to take us through that. So whenever you're ready, John.
Thank you, Chair. So, yes, this is confirmation of a tree preservation order at land opposite 50 to 52 Barrow Hill Road, Derry. A provisional tree preservation order was made at this site on 27th of July 2022. Members' consideration and agreement is now required to confirm the provisional order before it lapses on the 27th of January this year. In accordance with normal practice, officers had regard to the criteria for determining whether a TPO should be served, and the details of the criteria are in the committee report. The trees are under threat. There is a live residential planning application for 42 dwellings, which would affect the trees. So officers commissioned an independent tree survey, which was completed in November, and it's in your pack, it's Appendix 13. And it confirms that 25 trees of almost 300 on the site are good specimens in fair condition and potentially worthy of consideration for protection by a TPO. Other trees on the site were mainly self-set and were not flagged by the report as being worthy of TPO protection. 46 were considered to require felling. The 25 trees that were flagged as worthy of possible retention were considered in detail further by officers, and 16 of them were considered to definitely meet the TPO criteria for protection. They are attractive features with significant amenity value in this pleasant leafy area and readily visible from Bearer Hill Road and also a footpath to the east of the site. They have wider beneficial impacts within the local area and provide a pleasant backdrop to two listed buildings. They comprise 2 holly trees to the north of the site, a beech tree to the northwest, an attractive horse chestnut by the listed farm, and 12 attractive mature trees on the south and east boundaries, which comprise 10 oaks and 2 beech trees. The site is a zoned housing site, and the listing in the Derry area plan specified that the mature trees to the west and south of the site should be retained and protected. As part of the service of the provisional TPO, the agent and landowner were notified and no comments or objections were received within the specified 28-day period. All directly affected neighbours were also notified and no comments were received within the specified period. It's therefore recommended the order be confirmed with significant modifications to include only the 16 trees specified within the report as meeting TPO assessment criteria. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Members, open to yourselves there. If there's anybody got any questions or other observations that they'd like to make, feel free. Councillor Mooney.
Thank you, Chair. John, just one question. At 3.1, we just outlined, has there been any objections from the agents or landowners since the paper was written, or from any neighbours? Is that still the case?
No representations have been received. Landowner and agent were notified, and directly affected neighbours.
Okay, so sounds like everybody's happy enough. Would that be fair to say? Yeah. Okay, members, anybody else online there? Okay, that's going to need a proposer and a seconder. Propose Councillor Mooney. Somebody online? Perhaps Councillor Mooney's the only person on here, apart from me and the officer team.
I'll second it, John.
Thank you, Philip. Councillor McKinney seconding. Okay. Item number 10, which is the DFA consultation on the planning application validation checklist. Members, Maura, you're taking us through that, yeah?
Thank you, Chair. Members, we have a paper before you which relates to consultation from DFI in regards to what they call the planning application validated checklist process. I just wanted to put this in context. As members would recall, previously there was a review of the implementation of the Act, which during lockdown, which this council would have inputted to, which discussed a range of issues which members and council officers felt should be addressed in any future legislation. We covered various problems that we had encountered, and were making various requests. One of the issues we raised was about the quality of submissions and how we might want to go about improving that. And we actually highlighted this particular process, which is about trying to improve the early stage of an application, whereby we would have some sort of protocol that we would be able to manage the quality of submissions, because the legislation is quite limited in terms of how we can return an application in terms of having sufficient information. There was a pilot carried out in Belfast to look at this in terms of trying out various options about, types of applications that it was suited. However, without legislation to back it up, there was always potential, in our view, for vulnerability in terms of ensuring that we had the legislative background to this. DFI have clearly taken this on board and have now carried out this consultation process. So I have highlighted there the details in and around the process itself. And the checklist, you know, the benefits have been highlighted there in 3.8, which set out the scope of information required at the outset to ensure fit for purpose submission. So, you know, at the outset, when we give preliminary advice, that, you know, it's clearer and that all parties are aware of what the expectations are. They will enable the planning authority of all necessary information to determine the application. So therefore, we can proceed to determine and not spend, you know, days, weeks, even months waiting for information to be submitted that should have been submitted at the outset. They will minimise the need for further submission of additional information during the life of the application and avoids unnecessary delay, which is clearly a key issue for us in terms of the process. They provide applicants with certainty as to the level of information required and costs and our likely overall investment needed prior to the application submission. And again, I think this is a really important point. So that when someone embarks on the idea or a proposal that they may have, that they have a better understanding of the expectations that may have been in the past, a much easier, but given the complexity of legislation and the requirements in terms of surveys, etc., that would be, there would be more of an awareness of that. To ensure the appropriate information provided with an application to assist interested parties. And again, particularly consultees have raised considerable concerns in the process at the quality of submissions and how that has been delaying their ability to respond to maybe applications that are more fitted and have got sufficient information. You know, for instance, a BAT survey or whatever, by sending a consultation without that, it avoids that duplication and you know, basically consulting with the knowledge of needing a survey in the first instance. So I think that this overall was one of the measures that all parties concerned felt was a very useful tool or an improvement, and will probably fit into the wider plan and improvement requirements. So we've also talked about there the detail of validation disputes. And they've outlined two of the current mechanisms in dealing with that, so that if someone has a concern about the validity or the merits of the application itself, you know, they may be able to challenge that. And I suppose what we have suggested in terms of the moving forward, we felt that the Wales model was probably the best and that it was standalone and it was clearer. So we have suggested that in the response. And so that paper's before you, members, but happy that we take any comments in regard to it. Because of the deadline being the 6th of January, we've actually submitted it in draft form because I've contacted DFI because I was concerned we would miss out. However, they did accept the draft and said that we could follow up with a completed, confirmed submission when we had completed planning committee. So that's really it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Maura. So members, so the various bits and pieces of information in relation to that have been sent out to you all. And I suppose this is the opportunity for any further comment or suggestions that might be included in the response. And if there aren't any, then we work on the assumption that everybody's content with the response as it is. So again, I'll open it up to yourselves, members, if anybody has believes that there's any further comments that would be prove useful in relation to this. Councillor Logue.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thanks, Maura, for that. I certainly agree that this would be a good tool to have on the planning committee, and also agree that the Wales model seems to work better. So be fully in agreement with our response as a council. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Councillor Mooney?
Thank you, Chair. Just like Councillor Logue, I agree with it. I read the paper and I've listened to Maura and fully agree with what she said. This would be a very useful tool for officers going ahead, obviously, because it does provide that certainty for applications and applicants coming in. They know what is expected from them, and they know then that if there is a dispute, then there is a mechanism there that they can have it resolved. And certainly the Welsh model seems to be the most preferable. And given the fact that the paper states that the ratio now is maybe 6 per year, that shows that the actual validation checklist does work, because it cuts down, and it seems to be that the applications and the disputes are at a very minimal level. So I'm certainly happy to propose the paper. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mooney. Councillor Kelly online.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and agree with the previous two speakers on the points raised. And I'm just wondering if the planning department have done any work in relation to how much time could be saved if this was implemented. I agree that you know, these are something that needs to be done, and I probably have a little, well, not a lot, but a little bit of sympathy for strategic planning and the department in terms of some of this maybe couldn't have been foreseen at the time. You know, they were working to probably the old model of outline planning and full planning, and now, you know, anybody putting in an outline planning at this stage really requires a substantial amount of studies done following those court cases. You know, so there has been a change during the last number of years to the kind of the legal background to what's required, and I think this would help, you know, I suppose consolidate all of that into a formal process. And I think it would be very good in terms of the council's targets, you know, our annual targets. So I'm just wondering if there's been any work done in terms of how much we would be likely to save, you know, and up our percentages in that regard. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. We haven't actually got detailed information, but we've learned from the feedback from Belfast that certainly they've seen an improvement on the areas that they had attempted to focus on in terms of bringing in their protocol, but they haven't shared detailed information about the exact extent of it. And I suppose what I had always planned, and I recall this discussion at the time, Councillor Kelly, was when we discussed it as part of the review of the legislation, that the team proposed, once we had knew that the legislative amendment was underway, that we would ourselves start commencing some sort of a pilot in order to glean some information in regards to that, in terms of what type of improvements we might be able to achieve. So I was proposing to bring a paper into committee for members to get some more detail in and around that, so we can consider maybe what areas that we could focus on first. So we've done a bit of preparation in advance of the legislation coming in, and maybe some pilot work as well, if members were in agreement with that.
Okay, happy enough there, Councillor Kelly. Yep, thanks, Dan. Okay, members, any other further thoughts or comments? Okay, again, I need a formal proposer and seconder. Proposed formally by Councillor Mooney.
Second, that's Councillor
Thank you. Thank you, Patricia. So that's proposed and passed. Okay. I assume it's passed. I don't hear anybody saying anything different. So item 11, which is the DFA consultation on the review of permitted rights. Suzanne?
Thank you, Chair. Members, the second consultation today in item 11 is in relation to proposals to amend permitted development rights for the installation of domestic micro generation equipment and reverse vending machines. You'll see from the paper that the department is wishing to install, or well, make provisions to install microgeneration equipment such as heat pumps, and also for retailers intending to install reverse vending machines for a scheme that's been introduced by DERA. I have summarised the issues regarding the air source heat pumps, and we would have no issue with the amendments to the permitted development legislation as officers for the air source heat pumps or the groundwater source heat pumps. Also, in terms of the reverse vending machines, again, as an officer team, we had no issues with that. They have also asked about our views on the change in the permitted or bringing in permitted development for domestic wind turbines. And you'll see in the response, it says, have you any views on whether permitted development rights for domestic wind turbines should be considered? I think at this stage, as an officer team, we felt like we need to see the evidence, based proposals. We know that with wind turbines and with domestic and sort of the smaller ones, even in close proximity dwellings, there are major issues in terms of noise. So issues like, for example, how many there are in the area. There'll probably be information they'll have to take from the Department of the Economy or things like that. So at this stage, we would like to see the evidence before we would want to be making any more comments. But I'm happy to take any questions today and to add any further comments. As Maura has said, with the other consultation, we have submitted our draft comments, but we can amend or confirm those tomorrow with the department as members wish. Thanks.
Thank you, Suzanne. Again, members, over to yourselves for any further comments in relation to this consultation. Obviously, it's gone out as draft so far, but this is your chance to amend. Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Chair. And thanks again to the officer for the paper. I suppose I've just really one question, and it's because I'm not aware of how many microgeneration applications would come through council annually. So I'm just wondering, how many applications will we get on a yearly basis, and what would be the loss of revenue to council from those application fees? Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Kelly, we've had very, very few applications for air source heat pumps and microgeneration proposals. I'm not sure what the loss of fee would be, but I do know that quite recently the Housing Executive have undertaken a scheme of heat pumps into some of their properties. I can come back with, I can provide you with that information if you just get a chance to look at it. There will still be a fee for if they have to put in a CLUD, if they want the permitted development confirmed by council.
Thank you, Suzanne. All right with that, Councillor Kelly? Yeah.
Thanks, John. Yeah, thanks, Chair.
That's grand, Dan. Thanks. Anybody else? Okay, again, we need a proposer and a seconder. Proposed Councillor Mooney. Anybody online?
I've seconded it.
That was about 4 different people. Alan Breslin, I'll take you as our seconder on this occasion. Thank you. Right, and I don't hear anybody again professing to be against any of the idea in this, so we'll take that as read and passed and approved. Okay, members 12, 13, 14, 15 and 16 are open for information. So I'm opening them up for information, and if anybody has any queries in relation to any of them, then I invite you to come forward and ask your questions, or if you've got any comment to make. There are officers here, obviously, who can answer your questions, if indeed you have any.
Chair, if I could just come on.
Is that Patricia? That's yourself, Patricia. Yeah, go ahead, Patricia.
I
Yeah.
just noticed that there was a refusal on the Shan Donald's site, and I was just wondering. I think that was for for conditions, and it was refused. So I was just wondering, has that been resolved? For the the determinations that were issued.
I'll just let Moran here to try and answer that for you.
Councillor Logue, unfortunately, I don't have Andre and Sarah here who would be maybe dealing with that in terms of the discharge of conditions to give you the detail on it. But what I'll do is I'll get that and forward it on to you in terms of giving you an update as to what exactly that was. It might have been the provision of information pre-development, commencement development conditions, but I'm only guessing. I'll have to look at the detail of that, Chair, and come back to Councillor Logan and give her an update on it.
It's just that, you know, I just would be concerned that the allocations won't be going out as planned if the handover just wasn't fully complete. And we know what way we are waiting for housing development, so that's just what caught my eye on that one. So thank you for that, Maura.
No problem. I'll get an update to you and explain what's happened and get to the bottom of it. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Maura. Thanks for that. Thanks for drawing everybody's attention to that, Councillor Logue. So I'm sure you'll patiently await the response from the officers that actually just made a liar out of myself because I said there'd be people here who could answer the questions, but we'll get the answers for you. Okay. Anybody else? Councillor Dan Kelly, are you looking back in again? Yeah.
It's on item 10. On page 142 of that item, a paragraph listed as paragraph 4. The last line of that paragraph says, this application is listed on item 7 of the agenda for members' consideration and decision on conditions and informatives, but I can't find that item 7, so I just wonder maybe if somebody would pick up on that and clarify that point for me, Chair. Thanks.
Bear with us, Councillor Kelly. You said item 10.
It's page 142 or page 399. There's two numerations here.
I know the feeling. Different numbering systems. Bear with us now.
But the paragraph at the top of that page, Chair, is paragraph 4, but the last line of that paragraph is the query.
Sorry, that's the people.
Are you, Councillor Kelly, are you taking us back to item 10 on our agenda, or are you referencing something that's open for information?
I thought it was open for information. That's why I was asking, because it's references making a decision, but then the paper for making a decision isn't there, or at least I can't.
Which item in open for information are we talking?
Right, I'm flicking between yesterday's agenda and today's. On today's agenda, it's page 142.
No, it's not the clock tower. It's land at Springtown Road in St. Ephness. It's on page 142 of today's packer. Agenda 10.
Sorry, Councillor Kelly, could we confirm, are you referring to the paper, which is item 13, which is an update for correspondence from the DFI planning?
No, that's the first agenda item 10. There's a second agenda item 10, Maura, that starts on page 137. But there's a second agenda item which starts on page 141, and it's titled "Updated Correspondence from DFI."
That's probably the appendix. That's what the confusion is.
Oh, it's a paper.
That's the appendix. No, there's confusion in terms of the way in which this has been presented.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's listed as an agenda item, but it's actually an appendix. that what you're saying?
Forgive me, Dan, but my agenda is upside down and I'm trying to work out which agenda item you're looking at. So, it's just a wee bit of confusion with the numbering system. Just bear with us.
The point can I just clarify that what we've done here is that we have done an overall correspondence update which covers all of the applications that were subject to Article 17. I have done an update and attached the appendices from previous. There's a confusion because it puts at the top of the sheet, it's saying agenda item 10. It should say appendix 16, I think. So
That's it.
yeah. So basically, the main report is item 13, and essentially that was to provide context for members in regard to correspondence received to allow us to proceed to move to bring back the applications in regard to the clock tower back into committee, which we've already dealt with yesterday. I hope
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that clarifies. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Sorry for the confusion there. I finally found it whenever we were, got the answer for us. So you're happy enough with that, Dan, I think. Okay, anybody else? Got any matters that they want to raise under open for information, which again are items 12, 13, 14, 15 and 16? That's the marine plan update, the correspondence, we've just explained that, the enforcement review, the list of decisions issued, and the appeals update. If there's any queries in relation to any of that. Okay. Right, can we take a proposer to go into confidential business, please? Councillor Mooney.